Today is going to be a very special program. It's going to be different. It's going to be a tribute to our friend and our World War II hero, although he did not consider himself a hero, Brigadier General Bud Anderson. And the reason that most of you are here is because you were probably one of the lucky people that spoke with Bud, or if you were even more fortunate, you could call him a friend. He was a friend to so many people, and he always had time for the kids and for us older people who loved Bud and were able to spend time with him. So I'm back to the script here. None of that was planned. Bud was a friend to hundreds of us in our warbird community who share the loss of this great man. I'm wearing my flight suit today in his honor because flying with Bud was a big part of the wonderful times that we shared during almost 30 years of friendship. Now, Bud passed away at 102, so that tells you how old he was when we met, and I don't know how I could have known Bud for 30 years when I'm only 39, but there you go. But flying with Bud was a highlight for me over those many, many years in so many different airplanes. And whether we were flying a J3 Cub or the Mustang, Bud loved to fly and he loved his warbird friends. He was energized by all of you, so thank you for being here. To celebrate this life well lived. I have so many memories and that I could share, but we have people coming on who will share their memories with you. With a twinkle in his eye, though, and his special smile, we can still hear Bud saying, "That's not bad for a girl." So I thank Jack Roush, who will be out here in just a few minutes, and Jim Hagadorn for allowing me to fly the Old Crow for many, many years. And I my thanks to Bob Bull that you will also meet this afternoon for agreeing to carry on the legacy. I think Jack would not have sold any of his airplanes had he not found guys that he could say, "You have to honor Bud." So to move forward, today we will also recognize others who passed since we last met here in Oshkosh in 2023, who were friends and participants in Warbirds Review. And during the first part of the presentation, as I alluded to, we will hear from Jack Roush, Jim Hagadorn, Ray Fowler, who has been a big part of keeping these airplanes flying for everyone over the years, and then we will introduce Bob Bull. And we'll end with a very fitting tribute, a military tribute ceremony to Bud, where we will have the folding of the flag ceremony. The flag was flown over the Eagle and the Veterans Tribute that you see here. That flag folding will end with a presentation to me of the flag that I will then take to the family in California next week for Bud's memorial that will be held there. At this point, I would like for you to direct your attention to the Jumbotron for the introductory video that the very talented Air-to-Air TV, Scott Guyat, and the entire crew have put together for you to enjoy.
My dad used to put me behind the wheel in his lap and let me drive a Model A pickup. I got to the top and there was a car parked in the normal way to get in. And it overloaded my mind. and my dad grabbed the wheel and everything, and before we knew it, we were down to the thing and we ran into the garage. I can't remember when I didn't want to fly. As a youngster, I had that enthusiasm for aviation, and I really don't know. I was just fascinated by it. I looked up the requirements. You had to have 2 years of college in those days, 20 years old, unmarried, and of course physically fit. We went to primary, basic, and advanced schools, and then from Bakersfield I went to Phoenix, Arizona, to Luke Field. And as part of that training, you did actually shoot some 50 caliber mounted on the T6. The famous T6 probably trained more people than anybody in the whole world. Well, when I had the car the whole time we were in training, I had no idea that he had a 39 Ford convertible, tan, and all this. Of course, that's what I had. I had it from 1941 through 45, and then he sent Ed in there, and he had some tools scattered all over, big tools, hammers and big pipe wrench, and stuff. And Ed says, "Hey, Jack's having a little trouble with a carburetor out there, and he needs your help." And Jack's eyes got a little big, and "Hey, I can't get this screw out. Do you think it'd be all right to use a chisel?" And he says, "Now wait a minute, let's." And then he knew he'd been had when he could see. It was, you were scared. You're scared of the unknown. You didn't know what was going to happen. How am I going to react? Am I going to fight or am I going to run? It's kill or be killed. It's not, this is real. So I'm flying formation with him. We're doing the escorting. And somebody on the radio just says, "Mustang, Mustang, there's one on your tail." And I said, "Holy smokes," and he zigzagged around a little bit. And I'm right there with him though. So we keep on going, and he said, "Mustang, Mustang, he's still on your tail," And I said, "Holy smokes," And so I zipped out a little bit, and the guy hollers again, and so my flight lead then, he just whipped, he thought they were talking about him. And so he took some drastic evasive maneuvers, and I'm staying right with him, And pretty soon he lost me. And I pull up, and there's no airplanes in the sky. A little while ago there was all kinds of airplanes, and here I am over Germany all by myself, the thing you're not supposed to do. Well, fortunately, it seemed like forever. But then I saw an airplane, I went up and joined on him, and he was my flight lead. We never found out who the guy was that hollered, and of course I was green. I should have slipped out and looked around and said, "Hey, lead, you're okay, there's nobody behind us," but I had no idea what was going on. I was just hanging on. And that's my first combat experience at all.
Every year at Oshkosh since 2001, Warbirds in Review has featured great legends of aviation. Today, we celebrate the life of one such legend, World War II Triple Ace Brigadier General Clarence E. Bud Anderson. He passed away in his sleep May 17, 2024, at 102 years old. As a close member of our Warbird family, Bud Anderson and his stories will be remembered.
The next time he come around and I'm coming at him at this high angle off, this might help a little bit here. What was happening, that I'm just following him down. I need 2 hands to do all this dogfighting here, Right?
I was one to get in there and help you with it. You need 3 hands, actually, right now.
Fighter pilots, if I had to sit on my hands, I wouldn't be able to tell you this story. I need a prop here.
This is my job. That's the reason I'm still here.
When you're in a dogfight, you want to get right on a guy's tail. I tell my non-drinking friends, or my Baptist friends, that it's named after the most intelligent bird that flies in the sky, the crow. And that generally is recognized. The crow is a very cagey bird. But my drinking buddies all know it's named after that good old Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey.
Of course, the star is that old guy right there who is, truly a legend. And no joke, a fighter pilot legend. Jack Roush, who has added so much to this ability. When I bought my airplane from him, he interviewed me like I was a scrub. And part of it is making sure that if you're going to buy this, you know what it is, that it's a piece of history of the United States, it's important, and that you respect it and share it. And that's part of why we're here.
I love to fly. I learn something every time I fly, and I enjoy it. And to be able to fly a Mustang at my age is something very special. And not just a Mustang, say a Mustang painted like mine. Do you realize that I've had 4 different airplanes, old crows, and there's 2 still up, 2 of them are still flying. One of them crashed and one got sold and is being repainted at the moment. But when I was able to fly those things, I don't know. It was a special event. I think you can imagine.
Had the honor to help MC a number of presentations that Colonel Anderson has made to the public, both at Oshkosh and some other places around the country. Take note of the fact that he's one of America's greatest heroes. The kind of person, as a man and as a young man, as an adult, that we'd all like to have been ourselves, or we'd certainly like for our children to be. He's a great patriot and a great brave defender of our country and our freedoms. He's one of the world's greatest aviators. But past that, he's one of my dearest friends.
We're going to lead off with Jack here in a few minutes, but I'll get these other gentlemen out here first. Jack, if you want to take a seat, we'll let the others fend for themselves. Oh, hi, Jim. Jim Hagadorn, if you'd grab the next chair there, pull it up for you. Okay. And then Bob Bull. And last but certainly not least, Ray Fowler. The video that Scott Guyat so talentedly pieced together of all the events over the years pretty much summed up a lot of our affection for Bud and some of our experiences with Bud. But I'd like to go to Jack right now and ask you to tell us a little bit about your experiences, your friendship with now General Bud Anderson, who unfortunately this is the first year, and Warbirds in Review will never be the same with Bud not here. Jack, it's all yours.
When I started coming to Oshkosh more than 20 years ago, it was with the encouragement of Eden County Bowling and to celebrate Bud Anderson's military career and to hold him up as an example of what a true patriot means to the generations that follow the acts of bravery that they are engaged in. I regard Bud as a man whose values and reputations a father would wish to be held by and served by a son or a son-in-law or oneself. As the trials and tribulations are forced on our complex daily lives, Bud demonstrated his unselfish nature through his yielding of the 3/4 of an enemy shot down in action during World War II, and through his repeated recommendation of other aces, overshadowing his own accomplishments for the transfer of their name and imagery to the P-51 Mustang restorations I've completed over the last 20-odd years. Bud was a dear friend to me and my family, as well as to many of the folks that share aviation interest. He set a high standard for not only aviators to measure themselves to, but to the patriots and the citizenry that he helped to preserve and defend during the war. I enjoyed his company and looked forward to seeing him, which occurred frequently over the period of the years. He was instrumental in the development of the airplanes. He had advice on what he thought was the best features of the B model and the D model that were restored. And he was appreciative of the effort we made to keep him in flying status. Ed County recognized his contributions and the impact he could have on the EAA community through their promotion of the Warbirds in Review aspect of the EAA experience. Jim Hagadorn and Scott's also recognized that there was a great opportunity to not only showcase our products, but to recognize the kind of citizen that Bud was and what he meant to everybody that had contact with him. I had a contact with a fellow by the name of Mickey Rupp. That was a Reno air racer, and he was a purveyor of all things P-51. And he was a friend of mine through my racing experience. And he told me one day, he sent me a picture of a Mustang that he had taken on the ramp of one of the places where I was racing. He says that maybe you get yourself one of these one day. And I told him right back at him, I said, when I get the money and have the time, I said, I'll have a Mustang and we'll use it for something that would be worthwhile. The experience I had with Bud was unlike I have with any other person I wasn't related to. He was an inspiration to me in all kinds of ways. We went to the first reunion of the 357th Fighter Group in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And he insisted I sent the Mustang down for him to have at the reunion. And he was anxious for me to get there. I arrived in my 421 Cessna and was anxious to have a ride with him in the Mustang. He helped me get in the back seat of the Mustang, same airplane, the D model that Jim Hagadorn has and has recently transferred ownership to Ray Fowler and his foundation. But anyway, he had this airplane there, and he got me in the back seat and took off, and it had a overheat. The radiator had a problem, and it popped off. And he came back and landed it after just one circle of the airport. And he says, maybe it needs to have fluid put in it. So we put fluid in it and got it all the way full again. He took off a second time, and he got in the way of an airliner that was trying to land at Myrtle Beach. And so we had to interrupt our trip until I fixed my radiator. But Bud was always willing for me to try something that could be better than what we had, realizing it's hard to improve on 1940s technology. As one of Bud's friends, Chuck Yeager, used to tell me, remind me when I was trying to improve things. We kept it going. I used some lithium as a heat transfer agent in the exhaust valves, and lithium would vaporize and go to the top of the stem, and then it would not fall back down, as I guess the engineers of Rolls-Royce and Packard found out back in the day. So I sent Bud out with these valves that were not going to work as well as the original valves had. And he broke the head off a valve, and it came back running on 11 cylinders. And I thought, wouldn't that have been a disaster if I'd have killed a great war ace with some of my effort to improve things more than they should be. That was an example of what I tried to do for Bud that didn't work out right. But I knew this day would come when we started with 20-odd years ago and coming to Oshkosh. I knew the day would come when Bud wouldn't be here, and it would be a sad day. The P-51 Mustang was the center of his World War II effort. And as I was able to retrace the steps that had been made to make the engine the airplane available with the Merlin engine, it came clear to me what a tremendous effort the war industry has made to make things better for all the allies who are competing against the Axis. Bud will be forever in my memory, and I look forward to sharing his stories of the things he did, which I was a part of many of his explanations of the war experience he had. It'll be not without a tear that I remember him as time goes on. Jim, do you have something to say?
Thank you, Jack. Now, Jim, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, y'all. Whoa. I was just thinking, any military
fighter pilots out there, so a few of us. So it'll be most meaningful what I'm saying about Bud to military aviators. It was a little bit of an accident that I ended up having a relationship with Bud, because Jack put me in the back of a Mustang, and I had known him maybe 10 minutes, and we were at VNE, I don't know, I think down low, it's close to 500 miles an hour, below the trees. I didn't know the guy. We landed, and I said, I have to buy one of these. But the old Crow airplane was my connection with Bud. And I think actually it was a better airplane. The airplane flies really, really beautifully. So I come to my first Oshkosh after I got checked out in the Crow. And Bud is there. Connie's late husband, Ed, is there. And if you watch the video, you know, fighter pilot hands telling stories. And we at Scott's hosted the Gathering of Mustangs in Columbus, Ohio. And so we had a big chalet and all that stuff. And Bud spent a lot of time with us. And he was talking to our associates. And he was having a hard time managing both the hands and the mic. But he got to tell the story about his most challenging kill. And he kept the mic, and I got to be his hands. And that, a big honor, you know, for a young fighter pilot to be Bud Anderson's hands as he's telling about the most challenging dogfight. So that's really, now, you know, they had that, all those airplanes out there. I don't know how many people were at that Oshkosh a couple years ago. We had like every Mustang was out there. And so, you know, it was awesome for Bud, and probably was awesome for you guys. It was not so awesome for, at least for me, because I was in the Crow, one of the lead airplanes up there, and it was a hot day, and the wind wasn't really perfect coming down the inlet. And for those of people who were Mustang drivers, they can start to get real hot and try to overheat. And so during that thing, we all had to sit there and hold position, and my engine was running so hot that the first thing we did after that thing was pull the cowling off, and there's like little fuse things or some damn things that'll melt if the engine gets too hot, and we hadn't done that. But I was in that thing, and there's no power brake, so I'm holding, you know, and I got the engine up at like 1600 trying to get more coolant through the engine and the radiator. And so it was great for everybody. It was super loud. It sounded great, I think. But it was super uncomfortable for me. So Bud was happy. It was hard on me. Are you going to say anything?
No.
Well, if you know, it's like, okay.
He's the new guy.
Yeah. Okay, the new guy. So, Jim, thank you very much. And I hope we can, that was a great story I think we enjoyed. And maybe we can bleep you out where we can share it with other people. But thank you, everyone. So, to very quickly reflect on that was 2019 that we were able to do that for Bud. And he was able to drive down the flight line, see the Mustangs there, and their salute to him. We are going to do that again on Friday of this week. At the end of the Warbird show, the show will close with a missing man tribute. But prior to that, we're going to have a lineup of P-51s and invite the other fighters and the T-6s to line up on the taxiway and have a salute to Bud. However, this time we'll do a run-up and shut them down. We're not going to make you sit there and let them get hot. So that's the plan this year. We have a flag salute from the aircraft. I think it'll be really special. So hang around for the Warbird show on Friday. Thank you for Jim for that lead-in, so I remember to say that. So now let me skip over Bob because he's the new guy, you know. So Ray, okay. So a hand for Jim again and your impromptu words. And for the sponsorship and making this possible for the level that we were able to do that. a big thank you to Jim and to Ron and Diane Fagan, who are here in the audience, as always. They make this possible. Ray Fowler, you had the opportunity to know Bud Anderson very well over the years, and when do you remember when you were first introduced to Bud?
Yes, I really do. So very incredible to be here and obviously be tied in with Connie and Jack. Back, I guess it's been well over a decade before. Actually, I guess it's 15 years or so. Connie was flying one of Jack's airplanes, and I was flying one of Jack's airplanes, and Connie was flying Jim's airplane, and decided to swap with me, actually. So that's the only reason I started flying Jim's airplane, the Old Crow. So she just said, here, Jim won't care. Well, apparently he did care because he found out I flew the airplane back. And but anyway, since I didn't wreck it, he continued to have me do it. But again, just being a part of the Old Crow, and they ask, where do you find the stories that are the most impactful for us? And it's very difficult to come up with, but I will say, just like in the video where they had the statue unveil for Bud at his home airport in Auburn, California, and so this will kind of actually cover everybody that's up here, and I'm sure it's very something that's impactful to me. Just to get to go fly any Mustang is special. To get to fly an airplane like the Old Crow and with the history and be friends with Bud Anderson is something that none of us could ever replace, and I'm sure. Like most people here has probably met Bud if you've been here over the years and had his signature, and I'll talk about that kind of at the end. But having the privilege to fly with Jack Roush's airplane, the B model, and Jim's D model, when the phone rings and it has Jack's number or Jim's number, it's probably something that's a good deal and it's probably fun. So I don't even remember the year it was when they did the statue unveil, but Jack I talked to Jack about it, and Jim, I think, called and said, you know what, I want the Old Crow to go all the way out for that. So he picked his, two best Mustang pilots and his only Mustang pilots, Connie Bolin and myself. We switched legs, if you remember that, going out. So his two best and his two worst, actually. I'm not quite sure who was who and who. But so Jim pulls out his credit card and says, I want the airplane there for that event. And at the time, it's sitting in Stuart, Florida. So I can tell you, Stuart, Florida to Auburn, California is a long ride in a Mustang. And again, me and Connie switched out legs and scared ourselves on that trip all the way out and all the way back, to include probably the worst weather I've ever flown a Mustang in, if you remember icing up in the airplane and all that. And so, of course, I didn't tell Jim about that at the time. But yeah, so we went out there really effectively what was for a day. And every time every time Bud came out and looked at that airplane, you could tell how much it meant to him that people like Jim would do this and Jack would do this. So now fast forward to this, several times over, I get a call from Jack and he wants it to go out. There's two aces that are going to be out in Lewiston, Idaho. And so same thing, we've flown East Coast, West Coast for really just one-day events with the airplane. At the time is Gary Peters, is he here somewhere? So anyway, they actually wrap a King Air. Are you over here somewhere, Gary? So anyway, there he is. So he has a Mustang out there, but he wraps a King Air for Bud and picks him up in the Old Crow King Air, but doesn't tell him the Old Crow is going to be there flying on his wing, and we intercept him coming into Lewiston, Idaho, with both Old Crows, which is amazing. Same for his 100th birthday. So Paul Draper that flew Bob's now B model. He flew the B model out all the way out from Detroit, and I took the D model and went for his 100th birthday all the way out just for the 100th birthday event and back. And then it kind of I'll leave with this. I ended up going to his last event. So I get the phone call. This is going to be his last public event, and so we're going to go out and support him for this last public event. And same thing, cross country. P-51, by the way, is a great airplane for cross country. It's really it's a wonderful airplane to fly, particularly if you have an autopilot. But every time, by the way, I go through Granite Falls, and Ron and Diane are so nice to support the airplanes through when we come, and also has a beautiful tribute to Bud and a briefing building and a statue to Bud there at their museum. But so I go out to this, and again, it's the last event for Bud, and it's a very emotional thing for all of us. And he comes out and sees the airplane, and then we fly back. And I'm like, wow, it's just, I can't believe it's coming to an end. And I think at the time he's 100 and maybe 101. And we did fly him here at Oshkosh, by the way, at 100 years old in the two-seat Mustang. So I'm like, it's sad that I made his last event, but it had to come to an end. And of course, next week, I see him at Reno at his next last event. So he kept going and going. And I have no idea how many more events that Bud attended, but he loved it. I mean, it's who he was. And just, seeing who he was when he was around the people and telling the stories was amazing. And if you got a signature from Bud, even when he was in 100, and at a certain point he had to stop doing a signature because he would write out, and he was very slow with his signature, and it was very deliberate. And watching him do a signature was amazing to me. But I will say, just like all the calls, and I'll end with this, with the calls that I got from Jack Roush and Jim Hagadorn to go take airplanes. Here we are about 6 months ago, and this is not just for Bud, but this is for all veterans. So, you get a small glimpse of what these guys have done for veterans, but this is, across the board for a lot of other veterans. We were flying another 100-year-old veteran in Atlanta, an airplane TF Mustang, and it ended up, it canceled. So now I'm the person that calls the new owner, and certainly didn't know Bob very well, and I said, is there any chance of you coming to fly up for this? Without hesitation, he jumped in his airplane, flew up to Atlanta. So it's kind of great. Now I'm calling him to come support events. He came up and flew another 100-year-old in Atlanta, and we had to put up a 4-ship, and it was just a huge deal. So I know we're going to talk about a little bit of the passing of the torch to Bob with the new airplane, but I can tell both of you guys he's going to continue that legacy. And it was amazing that you came up. It was another amazing day to go do that. And without hesitation, just like these guys have done, he sent his airplane to support this. And again, we hope to keep this legacy going for forever.
Cool. Thank you, Ray, and thanks to Ray flying a lot of different airplanes. We keep the airplanes going, but that was a nice segue into Bob Bull, and we all who love Bud and love these airplanes appreciate the fact that these airplanes went to somebody who cares about not only the aircraft, but the history they represent and the people they represent. So, Bob, from all of us, thank you. And I know that Jack said you absolutely have to be a part of this or you can't have them. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. I kind of had the same interview process that Jim had spoke about. But, yeah, we're here to support, Bud and everybody here that's restored the airplanes over the years and maintains them. I think one of the things we've done is we try to associate a person with an aircraft. So our first one was Joe Joyner in Rebel, and it's here. And as you meet younger people and you explain Joe, they want to hear, like I'll see them and they'll, how's Joe? So they not only associate, I think what Jack did with the plane with Bud and Old Crow is an important way to continue our history.
Okay, so you have more than the Old Crow and the Gentleman Jim, is that correct? And we're glad you do.
Yes.
Don't be embarrassed that you own 5 Mustangs.
Yes, I think we have 5, yes. I think there's 6.
Oh, you mean 6. Oh, okay. Oh, pardon me. I was totally in.
There's a point where it almost becomes hoarding, right? Where it's
But look, my wife might be watching this, so you really shouldn't say that.
And I hesitated to say how many, but let me tell you, you are the keeper of the treasure. I believe Jack Roush said that. So, yes, we are. And we're running a little short on time. Bob, thank you. Will you come back next year and be our main speaker for the Old Crow and the Gentleman Jim?
As long as these guys come back, I'm here.
Okay.
That was the commitment we made to Jack.
So, thank you. So, yeah. Next year, I'd like for us to have an opportunity to talk more about the aircraft, and we will go back to more of a normal show next year. I want to thank all of you for being here. The last part of this program is, I think, going to be very moving, very special. I'm going to step out of the presentation by saying thanks to all of you. And for military honors, as I said at the beginning, we are going to have a flag folding and a presentation of the flag. And to conduct the military honors, I'm going to ask Brigadier General retired Ed McElhenney to step forward. Thank you, sir. And in addition to the honors for Bud, we are also going to recognize other veterans who were a big part of Warbirds in Review. And unfortunately, the list is rather long this year. We've lost several of our veterans, again, who played a big part in Warbirds in Review. In alphabetical order, I'd like to start with Major General Bill Anders, retired U.S. Air Force. Frank Borman, one of my favorite presentations here at Warbirds in Review. Frank Borman, who is a colonel, USAF, he and Lovell did a wonderful presentation at Warbirds in Review for us one year. From there we go to Danny Bolin, my late husband Ed's brother. Danny was one of our original moderators in Warbirds in Review. He flew the B-17 for many, many years with EAA. It was a highlight of his flying career to be able to fly that. To Danny Bolin, who was U.S. Air Force and Memphis Air National Guard. Major General retired Joe Engle. Not hard to find a more pleasant person than Joe Engle. Much of the character the same as you would find in Bud Anderson. So Joe Engle. Chuck Marshall served in the U.S. Air Force as a missile man. He was our Warbird treasurer. Although he didn't participate in Warbirds in Review, he certainly watched the money and helped me along the way to keep this going. Nick Nebel. Nick served as an Army medic and was an integral part of the Warbirds in Review production. You always saw, I love that picture of Nick. Is that just a classic veteran picture? He was such a wonderful man. We really miss Nick. And last but not least in my list, and I know I'm missing a lot of people who should be recognized, Dick Rutan, Lieutenant Colonel, retired USAF, Vietnam. Been here several times. I think the last time Dick was here, he says to me, I'm Dick Rutan. I flew around the world. I said, Dick, I don't care. We're going to talk about Vietnam. So to all of those veterans, could we recognize them in the appropriate manner?
Thank you, Connie. And thank you, folks, for being here and honoring our deceased veterans. Honor Guard, post. The portion of the flag denoting honor is the canton of blue, containing the stars representing states or veterans served in uniform. The field of blue dresses from left to right and is inverted only when draped as a funeral cloth over the casket of a veteran who has served our country honorably in uniform. In the United States Armed Forces, at the ceremony of retreat, the flag is lowered, folded in a triangle, and kept under watch throughout the night as a tribute to our nation's honored dead. The next morning, it is brought out, and at the ceremony of reveille, flown high as a symbol of belief in the resurrection of the body. The flag folding ceremony represents the same religious principles on which the United States was originally founded. The first fold of our flag is a symbol of life. The second fold is a symbol of our belief in eternal life. The third fold is made in honor and remembrance of the veteran departing our ranks and who gave a portion of his or her life for the defense of our country to attain peace throughout the world. The fourth fold represents our weaker nature as American citizens trusting in God. It is Him we turn to in times of peace as well as in times of war for His divine guidance. The fifth fold is a tribute to our country. In the words of Stephen Decatur, our country in dealing with other countries, may she always be right, but it is still our country, right or wrong. The sixth fold is where our hearts lie. It is with our heart that we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The seventh fold is a tribute to our armed forces. For it is through our armed forces that we protect our country and our flag against all enemies, whether they be found within or without the boundaries of our republic. The eighth fold is a tribute to the one who entered into the valley of the shadow of death, that we might see the light of day and to honor our mother, for whom it flies on Mother's Day. The ninth fold is a tribute to womanhood. It has been through their faith, love, loyalty, and devotion that has molded the character of the men and women who have made this country great. The 10th fold is a tribute to Father, who has also given his sons and daughters for the defense of our country since he or she was first born. The 11th fold represents the lower portion of the seal of King David and King Solomon and glorifies the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The 12th fold represents an emblem of eternity and glorifies God the Father, the Son, and Holy Ghost. The 13th and last fold, when the flag is completely folded, the stars are uppermost, reminding us of our national motto, "In God we trust."
I humbly accept this flag on behalf of Bud Anderson's family. I will present it to them next week.
seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut tree, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's bright and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut tree, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's bright and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you.
Fly on, old friend, to whatever waits for you. Fly on, old friend, your course was always true. And now we understand there's a fair wind in the blue. But here there's none who would not fly with you. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter's silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun clouds, done 100 things that you have never dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. I've chased the wind along. I've chased the wind belong. So fly on, old friend, to whatever waits for you. Fly on, old friend, your course was always true. And now we understand there's a fair wind in the blue. But here there's none who would not fly with you. Up, up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark or ever eagle flew, the untrespassed sanctity of space. And with silent mind, lifting high, I've trod, put out my hand and touched, perhaps, the face of God. Touched the face of God. Fly on, old friend, to whatever waits for you. Fly on, old friend, your course was always true. And now we understand there's a fair wind in the blue. But here there's none who would not fly with you. Here there's none who would not fly with you. And when we fly, we'll always fly with you.
In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, and by 1938, controlled most of China. During those same years, Hitler was building his war machine. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland. By 1941, Germany controlled Denmark and Norway, Belgium and Luxembourg, the Netherlands and France, Yugoslavia and Greece, and then invaded Russia. In 1940, the incredible British fought off the Germans in the air, the Battle of Britain. For many Americans then, the mood was to stay neutral, stay out of foreign wars. Of course, that was not to be. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. The next day, the United States declared war on Japan, and 3 days later, on Germany and Italy. Over the next 4 years, our country was transformed militarily, economically, and in the most human terms describable. It was the most widespread war in history. It's estimated that at least 75 million people died. By 1944, more than 2.5 million men and women were serving in the Army Air Corps. Over the course of the war, some 40,000 American airmen died. 18,000 went missing. 41,000 were captured. These numbers seem incomprehensible today. We and our allies in combat and at home paid huge personal prices to save the free world from oppression. Our veteran guest aviator this afternoon is a retired Air Force colonel. He flew Mustangs with the 357th Fighter Group out of Leiston, England, nicknamed the Oxford Boys. He was a major at age 22, flying 2 tours, logging 116 missions over Europe. He was a triple ace with 16 1/4 air victories and is currently the ranking American living ace of World War II. After the war, he continued his career as a test pilot. His last assignment was commanding a tactical fighter wing in Vietnam.
All right. You know, I'm sure they're going to regret putting the inmate in charge. So I have to take advantage of this. This may be the only time they ever let me be in charge here. So I'm Jim Hagadorn. I'm the CEO of Scott's Miracle-Gro, and that's my bird. Started flying as a kid. Went in the Air Force, flew F-16s 7 years, and then been lucky enough to meet a bunch of these people here. So I thought the way I would set up today is a little different than it's probably been. Of course, the star is that old guy right there who is, you know, truly a legend. And like, no joke, a fighter pilot legend. So the people who are here with me, Bud Anderson, and all you can say about Bud is a true fighter pilot. And if anybody's a fighter pilot here, you'll know what I'm talking about. He's done it for real. Jack Roush, who has added so much to this ability. When I bought my airplane from him, he interviewed me like I was a scrub. And part of it is making sure that if you're going to buy this, you know what it is, that it's a piece of history of the United States. It's important, and that you respect it and share it. And that's part of why we're here. Ray Fowler is he's a Viper driver, so another F-16 guy. He's currently flying. He's a Delta guy. So he earns, I guess, money that way. But he probably flies more of the unique warbirds that are out here than anyone. So I asked him if he'd be willing to sit with us. And the first part of this is going to be really about being a fighter pilot. And then we're going to end that with Bud, since he's the ultimate fighter pilot, the highest ace that's living in this country. And then we have Paul Draper. Paul works for Jack. He flies all these birds, just kind of learned. So we've been beating the heck out of him the last couple days, teaching him how to fly formation. And we're going to talk about the design of the Mustang. We're going to talk about how to keep them flying, what's unique about them. And that's kind of how I hope this flows. But my notes aren't very severe, so not a lot of notes. I just want to throw a little bit out to Oshkosh. This event, so I'm high right now, pretty much high on Mustang flying. So we flew 3 sorties today, I guess a 6 ship, and then 2 5 ships. The 6 ship had 7 motors because we flew with that crazy twin Mustang that's around here somewhere. Ray was flying that. This place, as an aviator, so everybody's got their thing that they get from Oshkosh. This community, for those of us who are lucky enough to fly fighters here, is the one place, one time a year, where every day we will fly military-style sorties, multiple airplanes, just having just a blast. And so Oshkosh, I know that there's all these communities here, and that's fabulous. This community here is really cool. And, so you're here, so I guess you must be slightly interested in it. But Oshkosh is great. Connie Bolin, who's the president of Warbirds, when I learned to fly the airplane, which, of course, another one of these Jack things, he said, you can't fly the airplane until you have 100 hours of heavy tailwheel time. So I had to, but he gave me his T6 to fly. Said, if you wreck it, it's yours. And I got the 100 hours. I passed my sort of interview with Jack. Now, he is a little bit of a, I promise not to use a lot of bad language, but he is a little bit of a butthole. Jack made me promise contract. He had a contract that says I can never change the name of the airplane. And he made it like, he didn't tell me he was building another old crow. So I thought it was really unfair. I call that one the faux crow. This is the real crow. So I thought it was a little unfair, Jack, that you cheated me like that. Okay. Flying fighters, for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I joined the Air Force. This is a true story. I kept it to myself, and I knew I was doing well in the first half, flying T-37s, so it was 1980. And at the end of T-37s, the first 6 months, my flight commander, this A-10 driver, Ralph Hudnall, says to me, here's how it's going to be, gents. Those people who want to kill people, you're going to sit on this side of the room. And those people who want to fly the killer's toilet paper around, you're going to sit on the other side of the room. Now, a lot of people wanted to be airline pilots, so a lot of people were cool being toilet paper flyers. But he came around to me and he said, so what's it going to be, Hagadorn? I kill people, sir. So that's really the moment I decided I wanted to be a fighter pilot. It's been a fabulous, it's like today, but flying around Europe back in the Cold War with the most fantastic airplane in the world, the F-16. It's hard to believe you get paid for this, So thank you, America. Thank you guys for paying your taxes. It's great working for the United States. This guy flies Mustangs. He flies that twin thing, Corsair, Zero. I don't know, all kinds of stuff. And he's flying airliners. And he flies the F-16 for the Alabama Guard. So maybe a little bit about your view of being a fighter pilot and the P-51, the F-16.
Absolutely. 1, 2. This is on. Okay. Thank you, Jim. Obviously, it's a huge thrill just to sit up here on this panel of these people that are very much more accomplished than I'll ever be. But I love being involved with this. I obviously enjoy Oshkosh very much. But same with Jim. Part of being a fighter pilot, I actually got involved with the Warbirds of America way before I was even in the Air Force. So I was lucky enough to come to Oshkosh in a T-34 of all things, when I was young and didn't really know what I was going to do. But I got to ride to Oshkosh in a T-34, and I said, and I got to see people like Bud and other heroes, and I said I want to be that guy. So I went down to sign on the dotted line for the Air Force, and that's what took me on the path. At the time, the Air Force was actually banking fighters, and they were saying, yes, we'll get you into a flight school, but it may be a year or more. And I didn't know anything about the Guard, and met someone that was in the Air National Guard, and it's really unique because most people don't think and don't know what the Guard is. They hear it's you're a weekend warrior, where the Air National Guard really flies pretty much full time. And I'd say only 40% of the people are kind of your weekend warriors, which would be people that come out and they keep their qualifications, not flying the airplanes, but doing other jobs, enlisted jobs, crew chiefs, fueling. And really, they're there to answer the call, and they go to their real jobs. And obviously, when we get the call that we're going overseas to go fight the war, that is their full-time job.
How many deployments have you had?
I've had 5 combat deployments. Unfortunately, in 2014, I missed Oshkosh. So I know there's several people right now that are deployed that would rather be here. And I was one of them in 2014. When these guys were out flying, having fun, I watched the live camera with them taxiing in and out. And I was sitting in Bagram in Afghanistan. So again, still nice to answer the call, but this is where I want to be every year. This is, I think Ron Fagan sitting over there smiling, he told me that how excited he gets about Oshkosh every year. And I'm actually the same way, as it kind of builds up, just one, knowing who I'm going to get to hang out with, which I look around and say, how am I here? I don't know how I got to hang out with these guys, but it's, because of Jim. I do give him credit. But it is an amazing thing. Back to the Guard. The Air National Guard actually put a package into every Guard unit in the country. Ended up getting a couple offers to go fly the F-16. And here I am 21 years later. So I'm at 21 years in the Guard and still flying F-16. So it is a young man's game. Obviously, it's a lot of fun to go out and pull a lot of G's, which I still get to do. But only in the Air National Guard do you get to go and start at an F-16. And assuming your platform doesn't change, you get to end your career in an F-16. And in fact, we just announced the F-35. So I don't think I'm going to go to school in the F-35. That's quite a commitment, about a 3-year commitment. I haven't said no, but I haven't said yes. But it is an amazing thing.
Talk about the Viper and the Mustang.
So the P-51, the F-16, everybody looks at this airplane. I think if you could pick any airplane to fly on the top list, it'd be a P-51, right? And the next thing would really be an F-16. And the F-16 has kind of transitioned into the role of what the P-51 did in World War II. So you look at this airplane, it did everything. Close air support, obviously air superiority, air-to-air fighter. So they could go out there and do what we do with the F-16 today, which is the same role. Unfortunately, not as much air-to-air. That's what we'd love to do. So we all start drooling, salivating, just the thought of shooting down another airplane, which in the theaters we're going to these days, that's not very practical. However, the support of the men and women on the ground is what the F-16 really excels at, which is close air support. And most of our time and sorties are basically direct support of coalition forces, U.S. forces on the ground. And the great thing about today, we're still dropping 500-pound bombs, just like came off of the P-51, except for the ones we drop don't miss. They're GPS guided, and we could literally from 35,000 feet pull the coordinates of the Scott's Miracle-Gro logo on the ground right here, and it would drive right into this within a couple of feet. So that's the nice capability of F-16, and it does good work for America.
Okay. So, most important guy, most important fighter pilot is Bud. Dude, it's like elderly abuse. They had him in there. He must have signed his name 1,000 times in there, like last hour. So will you leave him alone, please? But I got a chance to visit with him and say, look, I'm not going to ask you to tell the stories that everybody's asked before. You know, his first combat, actually, we're going to do the first combat only for a reason. Bud was probably the most famous high-angle gunshot guy in World War II in the Mustang. So I don't know if you know, a lot of these guys are shoot birds and stuff when they're kids, but the guys who can shoot with a real high angle and hit somebody, that's a pretty rare thing to do with a gun. So we're not going to lead with that. I asked Bud, hey, Bud, can you tell the story of your worst kill? You know, the story that nobody ever hears. And he said, dude, I shot one guy down and I didn't even fire my gun. So you want to tell that story? First of all, a big hand for Bud Anderson.
I don't know. That story's too embarrassing.
No, come on.
Well, let me see. One time, I had a flight of 4, and I was coming home, and we were pretty sour. Well, we were about the middle of France. Come out around Abbeville, where
Does he have water?
the Abbeville kids were, and Yellow Noses were there, and they were supposed to be a bunch of bad guys. When I'm going home, I had the guys kind of in spread formation going along. We had plenty of fuel. We had dropped our tanks and burned out the rear tank, and so the airplane was ready to go. So we're cruising along, not too, I think, I don't even remember, but say 20,000 feet, or 15 to 20. And I was looking around, and all of a sudden I see high above us 4 ME-109s. They were in kind of in a spread formation. Excuse me, Jack.
The abuse you take, dude.
These damn things, you grab a hold of them and they...
That's for you, sir.
I'll spill it all over it, buddy. So I'm watching, and there was a flight of 4, and we're going along, and I see this single guy comes out, and he starts right after us. And, you know, a fighter pilot can't talk without using their hands. If I had to sit on these, I couldn't tell you this story. So, single guy coming down after us, and so I had a flight. We just broke into him, and he goes back up, sits, and he keeps tracking us. We got back on our course for home, and they keep coming along. And a little later, he starts again. One guy, we break into him, you know, like we would go head on with him. And that's not fun if you'd have to really do it. And he breaks off, goes back up. What's going on here, you know? So we keep heading home. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes a single P-47. and he attacks us. He thinks we're MA-109s. We break into him, and he pulls up like this, and he's probably looking back and saying, "Oh crap, P-51s." And while he's going up, this Messerschmitt came down on him, got right on his ass, and blew him up. By that time, the guy had lost all of his energy, and he was right here. So this time I said, "By God, you've slowed down. You're in trouble." And I went over after him, and I got right on his tail. Well, not ready to shoot. And that guy cruises along, bails out of the airplane.
So, that was the worst kill he's ever had. Sound of Freedom. But, you know, the Eric Hartman always had this view, is he never shot anybody who saw him. He only shot people who just drifted in front of him or, you know, never saw him. Did you ever shoot anybody that didn't see you?
What's that?
Did you ever shoot anybody who never saw you?
Yeah, probably. Another worst one was later after the invasion when we defeated the Luftwaffe in the spring of 1944. And we killed most of their really good, experienced pilots. You know, the core of the Luftwaffe was killed, and that's really how we defeated the Luftwaffe. General Doolittle turned us loose, took all the restrictions off. You know, staying with the bombers, 18,000-foot rule. That's out. Pursue and destroy. So after D-Day, I think we noticed when I look back that the pilot skills dropped was much lower than before. And I could remember being attacked by a single Focke-Wulf. We broke into him. That seemed to scare him right there. So he ran, he got into the clouds, and it was just a thin deck. And sitting above it, I could see him. And I think he's in there trying to fly instruments and trying to hide. And then here's a big opening up ahead. And so I follow him, and I could see him, you know, a glimpse of him in the cloud, thin clouds. And he breaks out into this big open space. And I just slip around on his rear and like that. And I really felt sorry for him for a millisecond or so. But I pulled up alongside of him, and the airplane was smoking badly. And he popped the canopy, and a huge batch of flame just came right up through the cockpit. It was kind of a horrible sight, but that's another worst one. Worst kill.
See, I bet you guys never heard these stories. Anybody heard this story before? There you go.
You haven't read my book, I guess.
Buy his book. He's signed enough stuff in there, so he paid for it. High angle snapshots. So, you know, when you think about shooting somebody with a gun in an airplane, once that bullet comes out of the cannon, the guy's got to fly through it. And most people, it's not low angle stuff. The real trick, and this is, I think, the some of the really great fighter pilots just had a great eye for high-angle gunshots. Can you tell us about high-angle gunshots? And I guess that takes us into your first kill.
Yeah. First kill.
Well, but just another thing, because Bud's told the story a lot, and a lot of people have heard it, that he kind of was waiting and waiting and waiting for that first kill. And so this is a story about, like, the wait is over, and it's a high-angle gunshot.
Yeah, we were, I was leading a flight of 4 on the way home. And another flight joined us, same group, but just a different squadron. So we had eight or nine, I can't remember, P-51s, and we're going home. I'm leading. And I look up ahead, and I see this B-17 down below us. One engine feathered, one of them smoking, and he's chugging along all by himself out there. Wait, we're back in Germany. So I said, well, let's go take this guy out to the coast. So we head on over there. And out of nowhere comes 3 ME-109s. Their belly is up to us. We're coming this way. The target, the B-17's down here. They're coming down, going after him. Obviously, they didn't see the 2 flights of Mustangs, or they wouldn't have come. So I said, all right, guys, one of those is mine. So we cut them off at the pass and started getting into a circling dogfight. Well, if you get into perfect circles, you can do something about it. But if you get started wrong and you come at the guy at a high angle and then he's coming at you at a high angle, going around, and I can't quite get it in tight enough to get on his tail. And he comes shooting by me, at 90 degrees off, and same way with me. So I knew how to shoot. I shot quail as a kid. I went through 1, 2, 3 gunnery schools, the last one being the Royal Air Force Gunnery School. And I'd done a lot of practice shooting because I was a flight leader. And so I said, God darn, why can't I get on his tail, And I learned later that ME-109 in the hands of a good pilot down low could give a Mustang a hard time. So the next time he come around like that, I says, you know what I'm going to do? When he's here, I'm going to pull through him and fire and see if I can't hit him. Now, when I do that, I'm bellied up. I can't see him. And I have to have it very accurate. So I pulled through him, steady, pulled out here when I thought was a good lead. I can't see him. Fired a burst, and then he comes through. I see him, and he's smoking coolant. A hot dog. I got him with a lucky shot. Wow. I overdid my expectations, actually. And then I'm kind of cheering there in the cockpit. And then I'm aware of there's somebody just pulled up on my wing. And I looked over here, and it was Johnny England from the 62nd Squadron. And he had his mask off. He was grinning like a monkey. And he made some kind of gesture, sort of like this. And then he pulled away. and got in his flight, and we went on home. Took the B-17 out, and then went home. When I got home, in our intelligence debrief, I asked my wingman and all that. I said, "Did you see me shoot that guy down?" He said, "No, I was out of position." And they had two others we were trying to knock out too, and I didn't really see it. Oh Christ! And all the way home, I convinced myself that I probably did not shoot that guy down, that Johnny England came in here and shot it down behind me and pulled up on my way. I don't think that was very sportsmanlike, but I guess the war was on. And anything goes. I knew it was a lucky shot, so I didn't make a claim. I filled it out, but I told him to hold it. I have to talk to somebody. So now I'm going over to the officers' club, and I'm going to look up John England and get his statement. And how am I going to do this, Am I going to say, "Hey, you jerk, did you did you shoot that thing down out from under me?" And I didn't know how I don't know how to bring it up. So I go in the club. He's sitting at the bar, and he sees me, and he comes running over to me, and he says, "Andy," he says, "that was the greatest shot I ever saw. You got that sucker out there at about 60 degrees angle off." I said, "Oh, Johnny, lucky shot."
Just a sort of tactical question, and how you guys, the strategy. Did you expect wingmen to support the leaders, or was everybody free just to engage who they wanted, or did you expect your wingmen to stay with you?
Wingmen should stay with you, protect your rear while you're shooting.
So you didn't want them engaged with other targets?
No, not unless it was necessary, of course. But
so today we were out flying, Ray's leading, and we're out on the west side of the lake over here, or east side of the lake, and he says, "Look, there's a seaplane down there. We've got to go shoot." So all of us roll in sequence on the seat, which turns out to be Mark Baker, the head of AOPA. I did see the whites of his eyes. And we took that low, slow dude and just shot the heck out of him. How does someone get a quarter kill? That's a mystery, isn't it?
Well, a quarter kill, you share it with 3 other people, of course. You fly on a flight of 4, so I shared it with my complete flight. It's a little bit of a long story. It tells you something about the Mustang, too. If you're going on a really, really long-range flight, and I personally wanted every drop of gas we had, we'd put 208-gallon drop tanks on, but each wing carried 92 gallons. And then you had an 85-gallon tank right behind you. And what that 85-gallon tank did was made the airplane actually unstable, a full tank. A half a tank, the thing flew like a dream. So we were going to go back into Posen, Poland, I think the target was, on this particular mission. And I'm leading a flight of 4, and we got this stream of bombers just as far as the eye could see, pulling contrails, very obvious. And we heard on the radio that there was some action up at the front of the column. So we head up that way. And sure enough, here's the bombers. They're coming in this long stream, and 4 ME-109s flying line abreast, beautiful formation, are making a head-on attack. And they go through them, shot down 2 of them, and then they, in formation, rolled over, dived down, and then went to the front like they're going to go up and come around again. And we're back here chugging along trying to get up there, so we drop our tanks. I still have a full fuselage tank. And what that did, the full fuselage tank gave the airplane an FCG. And if you're pulling in a turn, you pull heavy, 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 and all of a sudden the stick gets lighter, 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 and now you end up pushing forward to keep the airplane from pitching up. We had dropped our tanks, of course, and I'd switched over to the fuselage tank. And so when they come around like that back, they started their turn, we cut them off at the pass. And I singled out one, and I got into a turning dogfight with him, you know, one right across, you're just looking right across at him, eyeball to eyeball, going around, around, around like this. Only I'm holding forward on the stick to control the airplane. And lots of top rudder, and I'm just staggering around on this turn, just barely staying with him. We go around a couple of times, and we're right in front of the B-17 column. It's going along like this. And we're out here turning and turning and turning, and they're getting closer and closer and closer. So we're both trying to get on each other's tail, and I'm hoping we don't drift. With the B-17s don't go right through us, but we're right in their line. And I'm hoping the German pilot thinks the same thing. And I'm hoping that he breaks down first. Whoever does that is going to be at a little bit of disadvantage. So we come around on another turn like that, and pretty soon I can see the detail of the airplanes, the windshield and things like that, of the lead airplane. Oh my God. The B-17s, if you pointed your nose at them, they shot at you. We accepted that. We knew that was the way it was. And so all of a sudden, the ME-109 sticks his nose down, and that gets me right on his tail. He's way ahead of me. He's going down like crazy. And this is a bright summer day, green, just green all over, about noon. And I can follow him, get down there, and he stretches out. And he comes around in a turn, like he's going to come back and go head on with me. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh, what am I going to do? Get in a turning dogfight down here? Or no, if I don't do something, he's going to get a shot at me coming head on. So I got a quick sight picture, head on, fired a long burst, and went by him. And my wingman came along here, and he says, you can't believe how you hit that guy. You hit him all over the front of the airplane. The cowling came off, the propeller broke, and the guy pulled up like this, just rolled over and bailed out, fell out of the airplane. So during this dogfight, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow. Like, here's a shadow, and there's an airplane down here somewhere making that shadow. And I noticed the direction it was going. Had to be an airplane. But it's just a shadow. I couldn't see. And he had to be low, and I looked and looked, but I was busy with an MA-109, so I got the flight together and asked him if we polished off, I think 2 out of the 4. And I asked my flight, did you see anything else down here flying? No. Okay, get up here. And we're down low now. Remember I said it was a bright green, dark green day. So we're flying along, line abreast. I thought he was going west, so pretty soon I saw the shadow again before I could see the airplane. And then we've come screaming up to it, and I see this. He's right here, and his shadow's right here. And I said, oh, my God. Obsolete Battle of Britain Heinkel 111 bomber. And I sit down low, like shooting fish in a barrel. And I thought, just there's another easy victory. Then I thought about my flight. And my wingmen very, very seldom got shot to get to shoot when they're flying with me. And so I said...
what a bastard, man.
So I said, get into practice gunnery formation. And as soon as I said that word, they knew what that meant. We're going to get to shoot. And when you do practice, you got your target being towed here, and you get into echelon left. The lead goes in, makes a left-hand pursuit curve, fires, comes over here, and then the second guy does the same thing, the third, fourth, and they get into right-hand echelon. And then you come in and you make a right-hand pass. So you get a lot of practice doing that. Anyway, these guys, as soon as I said get into practice gunnery formation, they almost collided, getting over there, getting into formation. and so I go in, he's down low, I fire, I get one engine smoking, pulled up. Noticed that he had a gunner in the back. Second man came in. I think he silenced the gunner and got strikes on the other side of the wing. I'm the leader, so I'm scoring them. And number 3 comes in, and he really did a number on the other engine. And he comes up. I score him. He's got hits. Number 4 was a new guy. He was okay, but he was a new guy.
Says it all.
And he goes in and he fires every round of ammunition he had in that one firing pass. And you don't do that with 50 calibers. You got to fire a few second burst. If you make a long burst like that, you burn out the barrel, and pretty soon you can see if you have a tracer, you can see the thing comes out, and it comes out like this. You're not going to hit a thing. But I scored him too.
You gave him a mercy heal?
and now the guy is in real deep trouble, and perfectly timed comes a big meadow up ahead of him. And he bellies it in. He couldn't bail out. And he's skidding along the thing and then hit something really bad on the left side, and it tore the wing off outside the engine. And then the fuselage just kind of spun around like that. So he had two big fires going on the ground. And believe it or not, 2 guys got out of that airplane. And one of them was just standing there kind of looking at it.
He didn't gesture your way?
Going around like angry bees up there, you know. And the other guy takes off. And there is absolutely no place to hide. But he runs. He's running and running and running. I said, oh, God, I'm going to give this guy a thrill. So I came down like I was going to strafe him and went right over the top of him, pulled up, did a roll, and then I took the flight home. And that's how you get a quarter of a kill.
All right. I know you guys are here. You know what a privilege it is to hear Bud. You know, he's alive, he's talking about it, he's sharing his experiences. So I think a big hand for Colonel Anderson.
Now, please sit down.
All right. You guys okay if we talk about the Mustang a little bit? Just about the airplane. Jack is going to talk really about the design of the airplane, what makes it special, what he knows so much about, and is a real student of this. So a big hand for Jack Roush.
Thank you. The story of the Mustang really starts in April 1940 when the British Air Purchasing Commission came over. This is more than a year before D-Day when the U.S. got blown into World War II. There was a lot of conflict in the population about whether we should be pacifist or whether we should be aggressive with this thing that's going on in Europe again. But the British were trying to find manufacturing supply or sources for airplanes. They it was before the Battle of Britain, but they could see the storm clouds brewing and knew they were going to need more airplanes than they could build themselves. So they came over to talk to North American, who built the AT-6 trainer, and they built the B-25 bomber. And they said that they had no experience with fighters, but they'd like for them to build a fighter. They'd like for them to accept a license from Curtiss and build the P-40 Warhawk. And the North American group, the engineering and the management both, had a number of ideas about what the future of fighters looked like, and it wasn't a P-40. So they negotiated a chance to do a proposal for a brand new airplane. And they gave him the British gave him 120 days, which was the same amount of time that was allotted for retooling the Curtiss P-40 in a North American plant and be able to build the obsolete airplane. And anyway, in 102 days, not 120 days, but in 102 days, they had a airplane that was ready for an engine, and they had to wait 18 days for the Air Force, or for the Army Air Corps, or for the Purchasing Commission for the U.S. Fighters and military equipment to give up an Allison engine. The Allison engine relegated the Mustang to being a ground support and observation airplane. It really couldn't engage in conflict over the mid-teens. It had a single-stage, single-speed supercharger that ran out of air when the fight was above 20,000 feet. In fact, it was above 30,000 feet a lot of the time as the war later developed. Because the German airplanes, both the 109 and the 190 that followed it, had adequate supercharging to go in the high 30s. But the Mustang, the so-called NA-73X proposal for the British couldn't do that. The North American people had some good ideas. Edgar Smoot was the chief design engineer. He was German-born, and he had his eyes on everything that was being done and around the world. The laminar flow wing that the Mustang is known for was really explored earlier by the Japanese and the Russians.
So they had the benefit of some information that had been published by the Japanese and the Russians. They had the NASA the National Aviation, whatever the rest of it means, research activity that was doing some things to minimize the drag. They also had decided to use a V12 water-cooled engine, which gave you a cross-sectional area about half the size of a big round Pratt & Whitney engine, and it took half the fuel to realize the same performance. So they had the V6 profile, or I'm sorry, the V12 cross-section profile. They figured out that if they put the right kind of diffuser on the exit of the radiator duct for cooling the engine, for the coolant, they could generate some amount of thrust. The claim was made that the scoop that they had would balance the thrust so that there was no penalty for having a radiator hanging down there. I don't know if that was true, but that was one of the things they talked about. And they wanted flush rivets throughout. So they wound up with a airplane with an airframe that was substantially less, maybe 50% less drag than the P-40 or the P-47 that were also airplanes of the fighter planes of the day. In 1943, late 1942, they put the Spitfire two-speed supercharged two-stage blow-out engine in a Mustang, and it proved to be 50 knots faster at 20,000 feet than the Spitfire, and so they knew they were onto something. So by the time Bud and his 357th Fighter Group arrived from Tonopah into the European theater, the early Merlin-powered, English-powered, Spitfire-powered P-51 Mustangs were just coming online. And they were able to make that conversion when Jimmy Doolittle realized that they were going to have to carry the fight all the way to the ground and all the way to the target if they were going to bomb the Germans out of the war. There was, just as an idea, bragging a little bit about the American industry of the time, but at its peak, the Americans built the Packard as a supplier or licensee for Rolls-Royce built half the engines that were Merlin engines that were built by Rolls-Royce and all the other suppliers from 1939 to 1955. Packard Motor Car Company built 85,000 engines, and when your maintenance crew put a Packard engine on your airplane, you had something that had 11 hours of flight testing. They burned the Packard factory in Detroit burned 80,000 gallons of 115, 145 avgas in developing these and improving these engines before they went in the box per day. That's a bunch of rail cars, 16,000 50-gallon drums. So when you got a fresh engine, you had a really good idea that it was going to be good. I don't think Bud ever had a mechanical problem with his engine. So we're real proud of what Detroit and what the Americans did to support the idea that the British had for this really good engine. I heard one of the guys talking about the Mustang. They referred to this green airplane as a C model. It's actually a B model. The B models, which were the first of the Merlin-powered airplanes, were built in Englewood, California, and the same airplane was built in Dallas, Texas. So it was designated a C model. The C models did not go to the 357th. They went to other fighter groups, but it had a B model. There were 4,000 Bs and Cs built, and less than 4,000 Bs and Cs built. And the airplane that followed it, which is Jim Hagadorn's D model, that's to the left here, they built 8,000 of those. When Bud ran his first tour, he had to share his airplane. Whenever his airplane was out of maintenance, whenever it was ready to fly, it flew. There were more pilots than there were airplanes in 43, early 44. In early 44, And unfortunately, the green airplane that's represented here was the third airplane that Bud had in his first tour. He finished his tour with this airplane. But two of the airplanes that he flew before, they were Old Crows, but they were actually shot down with somebody else in the airplane, but with Bud not being able to take care of it. But the Jim Hagadorn D model, he flew it his entire tour. There were lots of airplanes. There were over 8,000 D models built between the time they came online and the end of the war. And Bud never got a bullet hole in his D model. He got that with one airplane. There were 15,000 Mustangs built in total. Some were built in Australia. Some were built in various other countries. But there were 15,000 total, and over half of them were D models. The Mustang was cheaper than the P-47 or the P-38 or the or all the bombers to produce. It was $51,000 of taxpayer money for a Mustang, minus engine and brakes and landing gear, engine, brakes, landing gear, and some other and machine guns. One thing before I give it back to Jim, that's worthy to note. I know David Hartman touched on it in the video, but from Pearl Harbor to the end of the war of VJ Day, when the Japanese surrendered, there were 170 U.S. aircraft lost every single day. And there were 220 airmen and flight crew lost with those airplanes. So it was a big price to be paid. The Mustangs were at the center of it. And, of course, Bud Anderson, I enjoy whenever I have a chance to be one-on-one with Bud. I tell the people that hear me that he's one of the world's greatest aviators and greatest test pilots. He's one of America's bravest heroes. And he's one of my best friends.
Hey. Dude, I'm going to cry. Hey, just a quickie on Packard versus Rolls-Royce. You know, there's this reputation that the Rolls motors was kind of a hand-built motor. None of them were the same, and the Packard motors really were much more of a manufactured motor that the parts were all interchangeable. Is that true?
Well, the Packard motor car, that is true. The Packard Motor Car Company built Packard cars before the war, and they were the cream of the cream of automobiles. They were highly priced, but their quality was something really special. But there were 4 dashes that were built by Packard. There was a Dash 1, a Dash 3, a Dash 9, and some experimental dashes that never really made it in volume. But every dash number, every Dash 1, these are dash that came with a Dash 3, and this came with a Dash 7. Every dash number, any part from any dash numbered engine would fit any other engine of the same dash number. And the British didn't do it that way. They built engines more like we got a repair station. We build engines today. You look at a part, and if the part's got service life in it, you grind it undersized or you bore a hole oversized, and you fit a mating part for it. And so the parts, the engines are like fingerprints. Every one of them's different with a number of standard and non-standard parts in it. But Packard didn't do that. They threw all their scrap away, and they made parts that were standard. And you had not only better reliability, but you had in the field you had better opportunity to service the engines.
All right. I know it's hot out here. So it's hot here too. We're just about done. But again, I think it's a real privilege to sort of be here. You know, there's, I think, a saying for Warbirds America, like keep them flying or something like that. And I think that's right, isn't it?
That's right. Keeping them flying.
So Paul runs a part of Jack's business that is about keeping the Mustang flying and keeping the Merlin going. And he's also a newly qualified Mustang driver, led his first 5-ship today. You want to talk about what do you do?
Sure. We run our FAA repair station overhauling the Merlin engine and also supporting the Mustang community with reverse engineering and manufacturing new parts to keep these aircraft flying. The Mustang itself, the engine is very well supported. We have it basically is about 2,000 hours of manpower to disassemble, clean, inspect, repair all these parts of the engine. And just inside the Merlin itself, there's 14,000 line items. So there's 14,000 parts on that engine, which is a huge amount of pieces for any kind of engine to have. But it all works in harmony, and it's actually a really great design of an aircraft engine. The maintenance of these airplanes, it's actually, you can tell they designed this as a fighter. It was designed to be, a machine to go out there and fight wars. And they didn't really think about maintenance that much as far as they maintain the airplane for years and years and years. As we're in, 75 plus years of flying these things, that they were kind of disposable. They were meant to go out and fly and fight. And sometimes you get into the maintenance part, you go, how the heck did they get that part in there? And how the heck am I going to get it out? So there's a lot of that you see in the airplane, but the aircraft was meant, everything was put in there in such a way to keep the aircraft light, to keep it fast, to keep it maneuverable. And the maintainability was maybe a little bit less than desirable, but
just a quickie. I don't know if this works. I've tried to blow a Merlin engine up, melted a piston. Right now we only have 100 octane fuel, and these things were designed for 110 or 115. So you're not supposed to overpower. And I was in a dogfight with another guy, and we all agreed we keep the power down. And I decided I needed more power. And after that, my engine was just running a little rough. And none of us could figure out why. We started replacing magnetos, and I don't know, we just couldn't quite figure it out until the end of the summer. This was at the beginning of the year that I probably overboosted it. And the cylinders up in the front, I guess it's 1 and 6, run a little leaner, I think, typically. And these guys make shorter, I think, connecting rods to get a little less compression on those forward pistons. But I melted one. I mean, I think I went through 3 or 4 rings. The only ring that was left was the oil control ring. But it ran great, except a little bit of vibration all summer. And when we sent it to Roush at the end of the summer to get it looked at, they pulled the oil filter off, opened it up, and said, there's something is making metal. It was just like silver talcum powder in there. So here's the question. These things seem to, even when they're damaged, run pretty darn well. Is that true or not?
that is what we've seen. Yeah, the engine is an amazing piece of equipment that even when it's not in good condition, it still runs very well. And it's still a very reliable engine. And some of the stuff that we've disassembled for overhaul flew in. They was flying until the owner removed it for overhaul, and maybe it had 1,000 hours on it, but it was still in perfect working order, except that there was a lot of damage on the inside, and you would have never known that. It was flying.
The worst engine you've ever gotten back?
Wheel case damage. When the gears and the wheel case come apart, that's a bad deal.
That's the gear for the propeller?
No, that's the gear that drives your supercharger. It drives your fuel pump, your coolant pump, your oil pump, your camshafts, your magnetos.
That can make a mess?
That makes a mess.
I think, well, anything you want to add as a new Mustang driver, just the experience?
It's a phenomenal aircraft. I mean, you look at it, and it's a great-looking airplane. It flies wonderfully. You read all the stories about it, and you're mesmerized by flying the airplane, and then you actually get in it, and you get to fly it. And when you're flying with an instructor, it's one thing. You always got somebody with you. But the first time you go out and solo the airplane, it's just an amazing aircraft. You get up in like I told Jack several times, you take off down the runway, you start climbing out, you suck the gear up, and you pitch out, and you start turning to your destination, your on-course heading. And at that point, I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world, being able to fly this iconic airplane. And thinking about the guys like Bud, when you're flying the old Crows and Gentleman Jim and all these other airplanes, that it's an amazing feeling to have the opportunity to fly these airplanes and honor guys like Bud, and just beautiful machine.
So I don't know, I think Connie told me, does anybody have any questions for Bud or Jack. Feel free, anybody who's got a question.
Any questions?
They're hot.
If you can ask, okay, there I am. Okay. Where's a question?
Connie, up there, there's a guy with his hand up.
That
Come
one
on
right
down,
over
dude.
there? That one?
That one.
Okay.
The only
great.
one.
The only one. Okay.
So here's my question. I always hear about the dogfight, but I never hear about the afterwards. You kind of mentioned going back smiling, but did you, after a dogfight like that, did you try to link back up with the rest of the unit, or did you go back by yourself, or just kind of what was the process of getting home after having a near life and death experience with another fighter pilot?
Well, no, we were, I guess you say we were more on the celebratory side of it. You know, when a guy got a kill, you like to share it with the rest of the guys. And, you know, if you were successful, you got, well, I don't know how to say it, but when I wanted to do a second tour, I came home and then I got into the pipeline and they said, hey, you have to go see a shrink. What? Well, okay. So I go see the shrink, and he has one question. He says, do you know that you do not have to go back in combat? We have thousands of pilots that haven't seen combat yet. And I said, yeah, I know, but I still want to go. And I had a pretty hard time explaining it to my family and things like that, but I could tell you, well, I'm doing it for my country and all this stuff, but it was a camaraderie thing with the guys you knew, and you trained with and flew. And so when a guy shot down an airplane, it was a celebration type aftermath.
Thank you. Thank you, bud. Okay, Ron. Okay, I'm up. We're a little bit of delay on our microphone. I have a young man here who has a question. Yes, sir.
So if you could pick one thing that you hated and one thing that you loved about the Mustang, what would those things be?
Did you hear the question, bud?
No.
What's your
worst thing about the Mustang and the best thing about the Mustang?
Thank you.
Well, it got me back after 480 hours of combat flying. I got home every time, back to England at least. I felt confident in the airplane. You know, when you first start flying, there's fear of the unknown, and then after you get a few combat missions, it's not so bad. And then if you're really successful, and then it seems a little easier. The thing I liked about the Mustang was I felt like me and that Mustang could take on anything Germany had.
Bud, what was the worst thing about the Mustang? What was the most painful part of?
Well, probably the aft fuel tank giving you an unstable airplane full. Some of the groups wouldn't fill it up. They'd fill it up half full. But I always had the guys fill mine. You never knew when you needed a little extra fuel.
Did you ever depart the airplane?
No. No.
Did some guys, if they were ham-fisted, lose control of the Mustang?
Oh, yeah.
Especially with an aft CG?
Yeah, you could snap them. You could over-G the airplane very easily with a full fuselage tank. You go in, if you're diving like this, you're really excited. Somebody's on your tail and you're trying to pull a few G's, you can't catch it.
Did the Air Force care if you over-G'd the airplane?
I'm sorry?
Did the Air Force care or the Army care if you over-G'd it?
Well, sure. Yeah. It's just like the engine. If you ran high power, you had to log so many minutes at 60 inches, or so they could take care of it. The same way they would, I think if it went over a certain G, we were supposed to inspect the airplanes. It really wasn't a problem.
Connie, you think you went done?
I think we could stay here all afternoon, and I'm sorry to miss a couple of the questions here, but Jim has a departure slot here going back to work tomorrow. So
Do you believe you believe that stuff? I got to go to work.
Really. So again, we could all listen all afternoon, and I want to thank all of you, ladies and gentlemen. We're standing here next to the people not only who flew them in World War II, but Jack Roush and Paul Draper. Their technology, you can ask any Mustang owner out here, and they'll tell you one big reason they're able to fly these airplanes as safely as we are now is because of the things that Jack Roush has dedicated to producing for this airplane. Jim Hagadorn, thank you. And thanks to you and Jack personally for allowing me and Ray to fly your airplanes. So that's a personal note there.
Yeah, don't break it while I'm gone.
I'll try not to. Leave the keys,
Listen,
though.
A big hand for these guys.
Please, everybody, thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Aviation, the art of aeronautics, began with the dreamers, inventors, and daredevils who dared to defy gravity. The journey of aviation was nurtured by pioneers like the Wright brothers, whose first flight marked a historic milestone. The role of aircrafts in world wars was groundbreaking, dramatically changing warfare strategies. This initiated a technological evolution in aviation, transforming the simplistic wings of a biplane into the thunderous roar of jet engines. Let's journey through the ages of aviation. Behind every great aircraft, there were great minds. These visionaries, like Sir Frank Whittle, the innovator of the turbojet engine, redefined air travel. Then there's Skunkworks' Kelly Johnson, the genius behind the SR-71 Blackbird. His designs combined speed, stealth, and power, crafting machines that dominated the heavens. The contributions of these pioneers have left an indelible mark on the canvas of aviation, shaping the course of history and inspiring generations of engineers and aviators. Each epoch in aviation history gave birth to extraordinary aircrafts, each with their own unique features and roles. The Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird was a marvel of speed and stealth. The F-105 Thunderchief, a supersonic fighter bomber, was vital in the Vietnam War. The P-51 Mustang, a long-range fighter, was critical in World War II. The P-47 Thunderbolt, a heavyweight fighter, was used extensively in the same war. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog, is a close air support icon. The Messerschmitt Me-262 marked a leap forward in aviation technology. Each of these game changers were instrumental in their eras, and their legacies still resonate today. Beyond the game changers, there are those that have transcended their practical roles to become icons. The Concorde was not just an aircraft, it was a supersonic symbol of luxury and speed. The B-52 Stratofortress, a strategic bomber, is an icon of power and resilience. These magnificent machines and others like them have become much more than just aircrafts. They are enduring icons that encapsulate the audacious spirit, the relentless innovation, and the boundless ambition that define the world of aviation. For more amazing aerial footage, and to join us in this incredible journey, check out the DroneScapes YouTube channel.
If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.